This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me tonight are Richard Hawes.
Hello, everybody.
And Stephen Lockridge.
Hello.
And hopefully later on we'll have Will Bentley joining me for another little review. We're going to kick off with Christmas, Bloody Christmas. Then we're going to move on to the long-awaited Mad Heidi. A film called Bitch Ass is next, followed by Savage Justice, featuring a certain Robert De Niro in his DTV debut. Then we got a film called Ash and Bone, and rounding off with another Christmas movie, Nutcracker Massacre. Our short shot this week is Speed Dating, and we're going to end on our DTV throwback with another bit of Christmas with Santa's Sleigh. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first film then is Christmas, Bloody Christmas. It's Christmas Eve and Tori just wants to get drunk and party. But when a robotic Santa Claus at a nearby toy store goes haywire and begins a rampant killing spree through the small town, she's forced into a battle for survival. Okay, guys, this is directed by Joe Begos, who's no stranger to the DTV Digest. We've covered VFW before, one of his, which I think we all liked, but we thought the cinematography was too dark for its own good. I've also sort of films like Bliss and Almost Human is another really good one of his. He's definitely got a style, you know. He seems, especially recently, his films seem to be bathed in this sort of purple, red, greens, sort of very sort of prime colors. Very violent as well, and just very, very well made overall. Rich, how did you get on with Christmas, Bloody Christmas? And did it remind you of any other film?
It did. I mean, a couple of things, actually. I mean, the animatronic goes crazy kind of thing reminded me, obviously, of the Banana Splits movie and Willy's Wonderland.
I was going to go back even further than that, but there you go.
Oh, well, the film that came to mind initially was Chopping Mall.
I was going to go back even further than that. I'm thinking Terminator, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean,
this is basically crimbo Terminator.
It is Terminator, especially by the end. I mean, it is basically the exact same conclusion, final act as Terminator.
Yeah.
What I would say, I liked it a lot. I thought what's interesting is it's very much a film of two halves, because it's like it's a comedy, but the comedy is coming out of the characters and their banter.
Yeah.
And when, or at least for the most part, there's some other bits, but for the most part, it comes out of the banter, and the banter stops like really abruptly due to the carnage, and then it's like straight horror. There's no jokes or anything. It's deadly serious. Well, that's how I took it anyway. I mean, it played out very seriously, that sort of second half, final act kind of part, whereas the first bit is all this clever dialogue between the two, very, very, very vulgar dialogue, which is not generally my thing, but it's okay. I don't mind it, and it was quite, there's a boom 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 sort of rapid fire sort of stuff, to it all, which I really liked. The actors are pulling it off really well, especially Riley Dandy, I think, as the principal character. She's that kind of character who's like that sort of she's really confident, really pretty, and really sort of foul-mouthed and stuff as well. She can hold her own. She literally says, like, I can drink you under the table, kind of. She's that kind of character.
Yeah.
Which I really liked. She's a very strong heroine. She's not like, she's basically the polar opposite of like a Sarah Connor in Terminator, but yeah, it does play out, say, quite Terminator-like. I thought the kills were quite good. Lots of practical stuff going on in here. It was a film I'd sort of heard about it, sort of heard rumblings, and then I'd seen somebody say, "Oh, I've seen it," and sort of rave reviews, and then realized it was on Shudder. So I was like, "Oh wow, geez, it's out. I can watch it now," kind of thing. So I was like, "Yeah, I definitely want to see that." I mean, perfect Christmas view. I mean, there's so many Christmas horror movies.
Oh yeah.
I think we could mention a lot of others.
We've got 3 tonight. We've got 3.
Well, exactly. But and I think this is a really good quality one. I mean, I saw it on the back of the cinema release Violent Night, and I think that if you were inclined for a double bill or something, they're very different, but they both would work quite well together. If you enjoy that sort of crazy, sort of the themes and stuff, and a bit of comedy and stuff, then you'll get a lot out of it.
I really like this, and you're right. It is a film with 2 halves, because Joe Begos, he wrote and directed this, and he very much wants its audience to invest in the characters in the first half. It's literally, it's almost to the halfway mark, isn't it? That we're following sort of Tori and her work colleague, who even their best friends are sort of kind of hoping for them to get together. There's obviously that chemistry between them, but they're waiting for that moment when they're drunk enough things are going to happen. But yeah, and the conversation, it's all about films, it's all about heavy metal music, all this sort of stuff, and they're sort of very opinionated about various things. It comes across very well, very sort of impassioned, maybe a little bit too shouty at times, but other than that, I thought the actual dialogue worked really well. And as you say, the kills are really, really good. I wasn't too impressed with the point of view bits where we've the Santa Claus thing is sort of lumbering around the toy shop. I thought that was a bit slow paced, but luckily it sort of drops that shortly afterwards. But it's interesting because I knew nothing about this film. The hook was, it's a Joe Begos film, brilliant, and then at the beginning, we get this sort of montage of like Christmas TV ads, from the States, which have been made for the film, sort of thing. And one of them, as they're going through all this sort of crap, one of them just happens to be for this new robot Santa, which is going to replace all the usual sort of layabout sort of Santas, all the deadbeat dads having to become Santas in the mall and stuff, and he's going to replace all that. And as soon as that happened, I thought, right, it's all starting to unfold for me already, which is no bad thing at all.
Well, all that stuff at the beginning, like you say, the news broadcasts and the adverts and everything, it's very kind of spoofy. So it starts out on that really sort of proper. I'd forgotten about that, actually. I was thinking about the banter stuff. I'd forgotten about that setup, which is very parody. It's almost like not what am I thinking of? The like the Mace Brothers stuff that we've watched. I mean, they're not the first ones to do it, but the Zucker Abrams and all that, all the sort of spoof commercials and stuff that we've seen over the years, or even to to other stuff like I guess. The sort
like RoboCop and stuff like that,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so RoboCop is a good example. That actually ties in quite nicely. That's possibly a touchstone for this film. I think it's got a number of different influences at play. So the sort of satire of a touch of the satire of RoboCop, the sort of intense sort of cyber slasher kind of stuff of Terminator, and the sort of crazy Christmas, black. I mean, they name check things like Black Christmas and stuff. There's all that sort of stuff in there. I think, if you quite like, Christmassy horror movies, but something with a bit of a unique spin. I mean, the whole robotic thing, like I said, it's kind of been a little bit done to death so far.
But it was done really well.
It was, I thought, pretty well.
Some really good sort of, there's some good carnage, some good explosions and things going on as well.
Yeah.
Just, keep things lively.
There was one review I was watching, and they said how this film has quite a few endings. Just sort of keeps going, and they were like, "Oh, that's great! I loved it, and it worked really well." For me, that didn't. It was too much. It was like. It was like, the end. No, it's not the end. The end. No, it's not. It just kept going. And I was thinking, that's you're drawing it out a bit too much. I would have preferred it if it had just sort of ended a little bit sooner, but that's my only other real complaint about it. It's I'm definitely going to watch it again. It'll probably be one of those films that I return to periodically, depending on whether I've got a Shudder subscription, or I could actually see this as being something like Acorn might put out on Blu-ray.
So I mean, I promise you guys, we're not being paid by Shudder or anything like that, but I will just say that Shudder do have a decent deal on at the moment. If you're thinking about subscribing, I think it's 99p for 3 months per month.
That's really good.
I
did the 7-day free trial, which probably means that I've invalidated my opportunity to actually do that. But I don't know. But yeah, there's loads of stuff on there.
I got it through Amazon. So
did I. There's that what do you call it? Ryan Quanten's movie is on there, Glorious.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is set in like a toilet or something. I don't know if it's
that's right. There's also Alice Mayo McKay's film.
Yes, So Van. That's on my list. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that soon. Yeah, and there's a whole bunch Reveler or something. Revealer. Sorry, it's caught my eye. There's a whole bunch of great stuff on there. Obviously,
As I said, we're not being paid by Shudder. Honest, we're really not. But it's a service we sort of dip into now and again when there's
definitely worth a trial to see this, or at least. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we certainly, the thing is about Joe Begos, he's been very consistent. He's a film called Almost Human, which is about a guy who got abducted by aliens and then turns up and starts causing havoc. There's another film which is based on Scanners, or a riff on Scanners. I can't remember what it's called now. VFW is his version of Assault on Precinct 13. I think his most dense film is Bliss, which is about an artist experimenting with this new drug while she's sort of doing her masterpiece. That's probably his most obtuse film, I think. But I really enjoyed that as well. But yeah, he's a very consistent writer director, and really enjoy what he puts out, and this is another great example of it. On that note, Rich, go on. Sorry.
No, sorry. There's just one more thing I wanted to say. The Santa in the movie, who's not particularly visible, he's kind of you don't get a really proper look at him, but every now and again, but he's supposed to have that sort of sort of plasticky kind of look to him. I was just looking up the IMDb page. And he's played by Abraham Ben-Ruby, who's the name didn't mean anything to me, but then I saw his face on the IMDb and I recognized it. I used to watch an American sort of Ferris Bueller knockoff show called Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Parker Lewis, yeah.
And he played Kubiak, the really big guy.
Jeez, I didn't realize.
So I was like, oh wow, that's him. How cool is that? And he was also in ER.
He was in ER for a long time. Yeah.
So so that's quite cool. So I did not recognize him at all in the movie. Yeah. But great because he in the movie he's actually quite lean. He's a tall guy, but he's very lean. Whereas in obviously in the older stuff that he was doing, his build was quite big. So it's quite different to see him in a kind of role. But so that's a lot of trivia bit. The other thing I'll say regarding Shudder is I found a film called Dial Code Santa Claus, which I've wanted to see for years, which is like a Christmas Home Alone kind of thing from France around 1990. It was unavailable over here for God knows that, and then it's obviously made its way to Shudder. It's also, and they've got it listed under the title Deadly Games. That's worth a watch. That's quite fun. That's quite interesting. That was if you like that kind of sort of Home Alone-ish kind of thing, but like with a more full-on sort of horror edge. That's definitely worth a look. But back to Christmas Bloody Christmas, I'm going to give it a 7, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a very high 7, I think. Not quite an 8, but it's definitely a high 7. So yeah, 2 7s for Christmas Bloody Christmas. Currently on Shudder. We definitely recommend you go check it out. Our next review is Mad Heidi. Following a tragic event, young Heidi finds herself on a path of bloody revenge against the fascistic state of Switzerland and its most Swiss leader. This is a film I've been aware of for quite a while because of its production roots. You know, it's basically went through a sort of Kickstarter campaign or something similar. You know, it's very much homegrown, fans sort, you know, investing in it. And you know, when you get these sort of productions, you can kind of take it with a pinch of salt, I guess. But this is, in all seriousness, this is I'm you know, shortlisting my top 10 for the year, and this is knocking on the door of that list. I absolutely loved this. The parody, you know, the satire, the actual action, the script, the acting, everything about this absolutely works. I'm in awe of this film. We'll get into this a bit more, but first, Rich, what are your first thoughts?
I didn't love it as much as you. I think that it's got a particular tone and style that is not, that was fine, but it didn't sort of deliver everything that I was kind of expecting, but not in a bad way. But if the film that came to mind when I was watching it was Machete. It's a spoof, but it's very serious. It's kind of almost, it's like deadpan, and there's not actually a lot of intention. There's not a lot of intended jokes. That there are occasionally, but a lot of it is played very straight. And you know, like Machete plays that quite, you know, there's serious stuff going on there, and you know, serious. The jokes come out of, it's kind of the concept is the joke.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's you know, it's the absurdist situation that the film develops, because what we have here is a brilliant setup, you know, mirroring sort of Nazi Germany, but in Switzerland, where this cheese company has taken over, you know, and has sort of forbidden all other cheeses, you know, from the country, and is railing against the, you know, the threat of the lactose intolerant.
Yeah, I love the lactose intolerance. Like taking the lactose intolerant as literally intolerant of the cheese and stuff. Yeah, it's like they're intolerant. We can't have them because they're intolerant.
But it is that sort of, you know, that's mirrored of the you know, the Nazi propaganda against sort of the Jews, basically, isn't it? It's that sort of thing, you know.
Which I thought was interesting because Switzerland was neutral, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it was.
Stuff. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of satire in here that, I mean, they pull in lots of you know, it's like, you know, when you get a movie set in London or whatever, there's buses and whatever. It's like Theme Park England, you know, everything British that you could possibly think of. And so they've done everything like that's famous, that's Swiss. There's a Swiss Army knife in there at one point. Yeah. You know, the cheese is a big factor. There's you know, clocks and anything that's not conventional. I mean, Heidi being sort of one of the examples. But they throw that
as well. I mean,
mountain. You know, I mean, the Alps look amazing, don't they?
They look
incredible. The film does. I agree. The film looks great. The production values are really high. There's a lot of great. This is a bit of a theme now, but there's a lot of great practical effects mixed quite well with VFX. The co-director of the movie is actually a visual effects artist, sort of foremostly, I believe, and I think that's where that's come in. The costume designs and everything are fantastic. I mean, when Mad Heidi gets into her sort of Mad Heidi part of the story, that sort of that second part, you know, the costume's just flawless. I mean, it just works so well, and she's got that, you know, that sort of not mace, what's sort of a,
well, it's got that sort of spear sort of thing,
spear weapon that she's carrying. It all works really well. All the other costumes, and I have to say, it's a Swiss film. They've shot it in English. There's a lot of mixed accents going on because, like, Heidi is played, I think she's an English actress. There's a couple of others played by
Alice Kay, is it?
Yeah, and
Alice Lucy, sorry.
Alice, yeah, sorry. And there's various accents. Some of them like sound really Austrian, German, or whatever. I don't know enough about Switzerland to know what is the natural kind of accent to be there, but it's a bit of a mishmash.
There's a lot of French in there as well,
and there's some French in there as well. But I would say the stunt casting of Casper Van Dien as the president of Switzerland
His most Swiss, his most Swiss president,
yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, most Swiss leader.
I think that worked really well.
He was brilliant. He approached this with gusto. He really did.
Yeah. I think you wouldn't get. That's what I thought. I was thinking. He's so committed to the role. I don't think you'd get any of his other sort of peers, contemporaries. You know, not many of them anyway. Sort of throwing themselves into a project and a role like this in the same way that he has here. He really surprised me actually, because I thought, you know, you could easily see them casting quite conveniently like an Eric Roberts, but Eric Roberts would just do Eric Roberts, and Casper Van Dien's like he's doing an accent. He's like trying to, you know, he's really trying to chew the scenery and stuff. He's really going for it. And
exactly.
And he's not just a cameo. He's in the whole movie.
He's in the whole
regularly.
Movie. Every line he delivers, you know, really lands really well. I just thought he was absolutely superb. It's the attention to detail that's in here as well. It's great little bits. Like you got the female commandant of the prison, and there's a bit when you're in her office and there's a big painting on the wall as like a portrait of Casper Van Dien fighting a bear.
I saw that.
Which is just, you know, it's there for like a second or two. But, you know,
they've really tried, haven't they? They've really put the effort
in. My favorite joke is it's a nice little in joke. There's a Japanese character in the film that you see in the prison, and it just so happens that her prison number is 701.
Scorpion.
And exactly. So there's a cult series of films called Female Scorpion Prisoner, or Female Prisoner 701 Scorpion, or Lady Scorpion. Which made me smile when I saw that.
That is a nice joke, because she is Japanese, isn't she? I mean, she's playing. I think it's Clara. And obviously they've taken the characters from, I mean, the root is the Heidi novel, and so they've taken, so there's Goat Peter, and there's Clara, I think was the girl, sort of the they just sort of played with all these characters and stuff, and they kind of, it's funny because the way because it plays it out so at times seriously, you forget the parody part, you forget the Heidi parody. It kind of becomes its own thing, and then every now and again they might mention a character, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a spoof of, you know, the root is the spoof of the Heidi novel, but you actually forget that. It becomes its own thing, and I think it's a bit like that with Machete, because Machete came out of Grindhouse and Spy Kids and stuff like that, but then it's kind of, it plays it, but I think where Machete went wrong, I do like it, but where it went wrong, one, it's a little too serious at times in Machete, but it's too long. And this film is a nice 90 minutes. You know, it's very brisk, very fast-paced. You know, you get from one scene to another. Lots of, you know, you can follow the characters. I mean, Machete had too many characters, and Machete wasn't in it enough. That's a problem. Heidi is in this the right amount. Everything's just right in terms of the scale of the characters and how much we see them and whatever. So you wouldn't be disappointed, and you won't be disappointed with Mad Heidi and her killing sprees. Although I think they could have done I would have liked a bit more killing sprees, maybe just a couple more kills.
I think you're right. There's a nice training montage, and they do an interesting thing. Funny enough, they did exactly the same thing on Warrior Nun, the Netflix series, where you know, she's training with these nuns in the Alps, and they do a very clever thing of covering the nuns' faces with this sort of dark sort of gauze, so that when you're doing the fight scenes, you know, they could easily swap out for you know, actual stunt people, you know, so that, you know, without sort of having to sort of blur the faces or anything like that, or hide the faces, which I thought was quite well done. My only issue with this film is the title cards again. You know, this thing of like introducing characters with a big splashy, you know, this is Commandant Rottweiler or whatever her name is, you know, Rottweiler. You don't need it. You really don't, because with it, this is a perfect example. You know, it comes up on the screen, you know, sort of freeze frame, you know, Lady Rottweiler. And then the very next thing is somebody saying her name. You know, Lady Rottweiler, this is such and such. And you're thinking, you don't need those cards. You know, you don't stop the film for these sort of splashy little bits. Just don't. just keep it a film. You know, you're not. It's not a comic book. But other than that, I absolutely love this. How are you going to score it, Rich?
It's gonna be another 7 for me. I think definitely worth a watch. It's not a film I think I can see myself returning to, but it's very good production values. There's a lot to recommend here, and I do think it is one of the most interesting films of the year.
This is one of my favorite parodies. This is up there with Black Dynamite. It's not as quotable as Black Dynamite, but it is in that sort of ballpark for me. So I'm giving this a 9 out of 10.
Ooh.
So there you go, a 7 and a 9 for Mad Heidi. At the moment, this is only available, I believe, through the madheidi.com website.
They're distributing it themselves at this stage.
So this is like the premiere release, I guess, and then when it gets to, I don't know, your sort of standard rental, I'm sure it'll be picked up by other streaming services. But at the moment, it's trying to get the revenue back through their own website. And I wholeheartedly recommend this, and you guys really should go and check it out. Our next review is Bitch Ass. As part of a gang initiation, a group of teens are instructed to break into the house of a recently deceased woman and search for hidden loot. However, they haven't considered that the woman's son still lives there, and he is very keen to play some deadly variations on classic games. Okay, I knew nothing about this film going into it. And Bitch Ass, I was thinking of, what was that film with Danny Trejo? With Danny Glover? You know the one I mean?
Yeah, I know the one. Is it?
Oh, Badass.
Badass, there you go. So I was thinking sort of maybe a riff on that or something. So I was not expecting this at all. And what we get is, for the most part, a very good pastiche of something along the lines of The People Under the Stairs mixed with films like The Collector. I really, really enjoyed the setup and the acting. The script at the beginning was really good. But for me, when it got to sort of the middle part of the film, it didn't have enough oomph to it, and it seemed to burn through its cast really quickly. But that's just me. Rich, what are your initial thoughts on this one?
I think it's clearly got a fairly modest budget, but I think they deal with it quite well.
I agree.
The film has got a very interesting. I mean, it's a full-on cliche slasher movie. It's wearing its heart on its influences on its sleeve.
We've got that sort of Tony Todd introduction as well, haven't you?
Yes. So there's like
it's like
a spooky theatre night. So that's one of the things that it establishes at the front, is that the aspect ratio keeps changing. So it starts in a full frame TV kind of thing. Then it goes in a really wider than typical widescreen, very thick black bars at the top and bottom for the most part. But then during the course of the movie, it will go into like split screen and stuff. So it will put it will fill the frame again in a sort of 16:9. There's lots of stuff going on with that, which is quite interesting. What I liked about it, it is a slasher movie. It's a black slasher movie, black cast / full black cast, which is very unusual.
It is.
But you don't. I like it. It's not. I've seen there are other films that would sort of lean into cliche more, I think, in terms of sort of stereotyping and stuff, which I thought this film didn't do.
Yeah.
I felt that it was very respectful of its characters, and that even the ones that sort of they're being led astray and stuff, but they're not necessarily awful people. And some of some of them are quite comical, some of them are worse than others and that. But I thought overall, the film wasn't particularly mean-spirited about the characters. It was and what happens to them and stuff. It was pretty well done. The concept itself, as you say, People Under the Stairs, massive influence, but combined with something like Dr. Giggles, which is sort of a themed slasher movie, something with a hook and whatever, and a damaged individual. So like Dr. Giggles is in that movie in the 90s. He thought he was a doctor, so there was all this silly stuff, like he would suddenly have like random huge huge plasters and stuff to kill people with,
Mm.
or things to suck people's insides out. And in this one, the theme is board games. And so, but what works and what seems like it doesn't work, but actually when you think about it, works quite well, is he's the guy who lives in the house is this board game fanatic, and he takes his victims and he plays these sort of killer board games with them. So there's a Saw kind of bit going on there as well. Mm-hmm. And like you say, the collection, things like that. But it's the games themselves, which are never named. There's another playful thing they do, which is kind of giving chapters to the thing. So they announce they do these title card, kind of quite clever title card things for each of the games, and also some graphics of the players and stuff involved in the games, which I liked. But the games themselves, like let's say the Connect 4 one, for example, mm-hmm. or whatever they call it in America, you can see it's like homemade. Yeah, it's not like a really polished something. See, something like Saw, yeah, exactly, would make it really fancy, and it was like it'd be like, well, it wouldn't there's no possible way it could look like that in real life, because you can't do it. And that's the thing about the Saw movies, is that it's like nobody could build that. It's like, but in this movie, you see these versions, you know, his version of Jenga and stuff like that, and it's feasible. It looks like it's something he could have made, you know, with limited resources and stuff. So what seems at first like a bit, you know, not very great because of budget limitations and stuff, actually is one of the stronger parts of the film when you think about it, because it actually makes it feel more realistic and more work within the realms of the sort of real life environment that they're in. The killer and his mask and stuff, not so keen on, but I like what they've tried to do there, and the origin of the name of the character, which is the title of the movie. Mm-hmm. I thought that was all handled quite well. Say, it's nothing you haven't seen before, but it's done in a different way, it's cast in a different way, and it sort of brings a bit of a novelty. And I like the I think the board games sort of angle. I mean, we've seen there have been slasher movies that sort of play on games and things in the past, but not in quite this way, and I thought it worked really well.
I agree. I take on board what you're saying about, you know, the homemade aspect of it. Mm. I think that does sort of make a lot of sense. I really enjoyed the script. You got this guy who's like, you know, the main gang leader, you know, on this particular part of Turf, and his dialogue is superb. You know, the bits when he's sort of chewing these guys out and stuff, I thought it worked really, really well. You know, that bit at the beginning when one of his guys gets nabbed, and then they're talking about it later on, going, "Oh, you think he got arrested again for, like, you know, purse snatching?" Oh, bloody hell, you know. It just works really, really well. And
well, that's an example there. That character, what you're talking about, and him. There's an example of what I'm saying about some of the characters are worse than others, but the film respects them. They sort of gives them a bit of an arc. And there's something. The film treats all the characters, even the guy who's like the bad guy, basically sets all this in motion. Even treats him quite well. I felt that was how I felt to it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of pathos. Our main character's mum gets drawn in. Turns out she's got, you know, she's involved in what happened, and those sort of flashback scenes work really well as well. It is very well done. I still feel it just kind of just sort of burned through a lot of its cast very quickly, and that's sort of a little bit, because there's only 4 of them, you know, to begin with. Then the others sort of come in, but for a bit, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be like just the protagonist and the antagonist just sort of like chasing each other around the house now, you know, because there's nothing else. But I was proven wrong overall.
Which is interesting in something like Christmas Bloody Christmas, which is, you know, plays out over a larger canvas. There's not many characters in that. There's actually not many. Right. Yeah. There's not many. Once
you get past the you know, the police station bit, then it literally is 2 characters, isn't it? You know, sort of protagonist, antagonist. But,
some films I think need higher body. Some films don't
Yeah.
need high body counts. They sort of manage to do it, and other films it's like, yeah, you burn through the characters, and then it's like, oh, actually we've got to get these other characters over there, otherwise the film's going to have to stop. And that's kind of.
I mean,
that's what this one does a little bit of.
you mentioned the scorecard bit. Now you can imagine how I feel about that, having what I said about Mad Heidi. But
well, I know you don't like title cards of like people's names, but how did you feel about these sort of I sort of consider them like a chapter kind of thing.
It is a bit, and it's a bit winky, and I'm not a fan of chapter cards either, you know. But yeah.
And the other thing is, it wasn't just title card. It wasn't just chapters, was it? It was rooms. Do you remember? They would walk up and it would say front room.
That was quite clever. I must admit, that was quite clever. And at first I thought, is that really written there? You know, like basement.
It's that panic room kind of style where it just sort of looks like it's part of the environment. And it's the opening credits like that. But why? There was like a bit where it said like hall. It wasn't like there was like a chapter of something that happened in the hall. It felt like it was naming just where they were in the house, which I didn't quite think was necessary. I thought putting the titles on, you know, the sort of clever graphics of the individual game parts was fine, but the naming the rooms and stuff in the house things, I didn't quite get what they were trying to achieve with that. Whether it was to do with the geography or something, I didn't really. I don't know. That bit just, I thought they looked good, but it didn't actually sort of take me anywhere. But yeah, it really surprised me. I wasn't expecting much. I didn't know much about. I didn't know anything about it. Same as you.
No.
I love a slasher movie. It actually sort of made me excited to watch some other slasher movies again, and that's always a good thing.
It is very good. Yeah, you know, the fact that it's something. You know, people on the stairs, things like that, in a good way. You know, in a very comparable way. I think it's a good thing. What are you going to score it?
Well, we've got a bit of a theme here. I'm going to go for another 7.
Yeah, I want to agree with a 7 on this one. 2 7s for bitch ass. Go check it out. Our next review is Savage Justice. A recovering opioid addict seeks revenge on the dealers responsible for selling the drugs that resulted in his fiance's death. Now, guys, we've talked about what's the name of the investment firm involved here?
Bondit Media Capital.
Yeah. So, you know,
Randall Emmett and Emmett Furler films. And stuff,
exactly.
basically.
We've come across these guys before. And I have on this show basically said, you know, I'm very wary of any film that you know, where their logo comes up. And I must admit, you know, the hairs on the back of my neck sort of stood up a little bit when their name appeared, along with about another 10 production companies. And then, you know, when the credits started, it was all about the production companies and no mention of either the director or the stars of the film, which is, you know, considering Robert De Niro and John Malkovich are involved, I find that kind of disingenuous personally. But there you go.
Yeah.
However, I didn't mind this. It's a film of two halves, very much. The first half is this kitchen sink drama about this couple who are trying to, you know, ditch their demons, get off drugs, struggling with it, and then, you know, some guy they know sort of gives them some dodgy gear. And, you know, tragedy ensues. And then, you know, the revenge bit kicks in, which is the good half of the film as far as I'm concerned, you know, the main good half. There is one moment of unintentional hilarity in this, when our hero, Shelby, is considering killing himself after, It's funny because my son and I had recently watched Lethal Weapon, and the scene where Mel Gibson is trying to kill himself, you know, in that is brilliant. You know, it's really heartfelt. You think, oh my God, no, stop! You know, he pulls himself back from the brink. This bit, the guy is interrupted by a horse.
Yeah.
I I actually laughed out loud when this happened. Oh, it absolutely killed me. Completely unintentionally funny, but there you go. The second half of this is really well done, and all through it we've got Robert De Niro popping up as this sheriff, who am I right in thinking he's Shelby's dad?
No.
No.
He's
No.
got his own
No.
issues. I wasn't sure because he keeps looking at this photo of a teenager and I'm thinking, is that meant to be
No,
Shelby?
Shelby was the girl, yeah?
Is it? No,
No.
No, Shelby's the guy.
Shelby's the guy. Jack Hughes.
Shelby's the guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. No, I think it was just like an echoing story sort of thing. To be honest, I just don't. I think the De Niro stuff wasn't. It's like a separate thing, not really necessary. But anyway, I'll let you keep going.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is very much out of the action until towards the very end of the film. But I thought they got the action scenes quite well done. There's a whole bit where he raids this compound in the fields and stuff, and I thought the camera work was really good. I thought the editing was really good. The choreography of that particular scene was superb. It really, really worked, and it's probably the best thing that these guys have done, been involved in. It worked really well. I mean, the film as a whole, I think, is, it is a step above what they've done before. It's directed by Randall Emmett, who had done
Emmett himself.
Indeed, yeah. But he did what was it called, Midnight in the Switch Glass,
Which I had quite liked.
Which we quite liked, yeah. One of the better films that Bruce has been involved in. So yeah, there are some, absolute positive points to this. But I found the first half of it to sort of drag a bit overall. I wasn't particularly invested in this couple's sort of struggle with addiction, but there you go, that's just me. Steve, what do you make of Savage Justice?
Yeah, definitely a film of two halves, and like you say, I thought the second half was immensely better than the first. It dragged, I thought, the first half. I know it's trying to give you the character building and giving some arc beyond, just to get the revenge and stuff. But yeah, it was just a little bit too slow, a little bit too maudlin, but like you say, I think it is the shooting for more than what they have been. This normally it's just, we'll be in a compound and we'll get attacked by a drug dealer and that's it. But this had a bit more heart, a bit more, not compassion, but there was a bit more substance to the story than there has been in the previous films that they've done. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, the performances were good. I liked what's she called? The Ruby Red. Willa Fitzgerald. I thought she was pretty good in it.
She was good, yeah.
I think the other thing that kind of annoyed me, that let it down, was the twist at the end. I was a bit,
I'd kind of guessed it, I must admit. I knew it was going to be something along those sort of lines, or it was either going to be him or, there's two prominent actors in this. Let's face it, and it's going to be one of them. It's bound to be one of them.
But actually, I know De Niro, it might be his first DTV, but he gives a quite decent performance, and he's not
phoning it in.
No, exactly. He's not phoning it in. He's actually giving some.
He's got this sort of very sort of melancholic air to him. There's that bit where he hallucinates when they're driving. He sort of has to get out of the car, and he gives this little sort of monologue. I thought it was very good. It's very solid.
It kind of reminded me of like Tommy Lee Jones in No Country for Old Men.
Yes, yes, it was that sort of performance.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, it's pretty decent.
Rich, over to you.
I go into this, I'm thinking it's a guy holding a gun, action movie. He's walking away from fire in certain posters and stuff. So, and then actually, no, like you say, kitchen sink drama for quite a long time. Really, is sort of a lot of the building up to what then becomes a revenge story in the sort of second part. And there's some pretty brutal stuff in there, the nail gun stuff and things like that. And
I do like, that bit where he goes to the hotel and it's like all those partying college kids and stuff, and he goes, that bit I thought was really good as well.
Yeah. So that's Jack Houston playing is Shelby, isn't it? He said Shelby John. Playing the sort of lead character. Him and say Willa Fitzgerald as Ruby Red. It's fine, I was okay. I didn't mind it. It was just I was a bit taken aback that I was watching this sort of addiction drama for that first part, and being introduced to various characters. And there's the whole religious, all the religious stuff that comes in, and being washed in the river, and because her parents, led by John Malkovich as her father, they're sort of a Christian sort of denominator of some description. I'm not sure. Baptists, I guess. I don't know. I don't know enough about the sort of religious communities in these sort of areas and stuff, because it's all set sort of in the deep rural area of I'm not sure where, but like I don't know, where would you say it's set?
That sort of thing, the Ozarks or somewhere, it's sort of Mississippi or somewhere like
that. Somewhere like that. So that's a good point. Yeah,
my geography is dreadful for that.
No, mine's too. And then it all kicks in. I liked it. I did. I do think Randall Emmett's got this reputation for producing all these, sort of what they term the geezer teaser movies and stuff. But he is actually a pretty good filmmaker. I would say, that he manages to assemble good people and put together pretty good stories. I think in the two or three films that he's directed that I've seen, I'd say this and Midnight and Switchgrass are the two that I've seen that I know that he directed. And I think he certainly seems to me to do a better job than a lot of the people that he hires.
Yes, I agree. Maybe that's why he did this one.
I don't know. Yeah, and obviously he's pulled in sort of both. He's pulled in De Niro and Malkovich for this one. De Niro has done some DTV stuff in the past, but he does it every now and again. He did a film with 50 Cent called Freelancers, also known as Crossfire, and another film he did with John Travolta called Killing Season. And I think there's possibly I haven't seen it, although I see it's from the same director who did Daredevil, which sort of piques my interest. But so De Niro's sort of dipped his toe in every now and again, but this one seems like a Willis kind of one. This is like, maybe they couldn't get Willis, so they've sort of gone to De Niro. It's more, he's fine, but his character really doesn't need to be there, and it's
not really,
it's just weight, adding weight to the cast is basically the only reason he's there. Malkovich has a similar kind of role, but there's a little bit more.
He's got a good monologue at the end, doesn't he?
He's got some nice scenes, definitely. I mean, it's always good to see Malkovich and De Niro. They're two of the finest actors of their sort of generation. Then this is not the kind of movie that sort of is them on peak form, and we're seeing this quite a lot. Some of these actors in the latter part of their career, they're sort of taking these quick jobs and stuff, which fair enough, that's kind of the way things go, but that they certainly do bring value, I would say. I mean, it's not more than just marquee. You like seeing them, you like you're interested in the characters that they're playing. For me, Malkovich was more interesting than De Niro, but they definitely did add something. It wasn't annoying to me too much that they were in it, but I would say I liked it. But you've got to be sort of prepared to know that it's actually sort of foremost it's a drama. You got to sort of be prepared for that, and then the build up to sort of an action thing. But it's even when the action kicks in, that's kind of punctuation marks, really. That it's more of a drama with some action in it.
Yeah, but when the action does come, it is very well done, I have to say. So, scores on the doors, Steve.
I'll give it a 7.
All right. Yeah, I think I'll join you on a 7, believe it or not. And Rich.
Yeah, I hate to keep saying 7, but 7. Yeah, it's perfectly fine. It's good. It's watchable. It's not.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a lower 7 rather than a Mad Heidi higher 7.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still a 7.
Yeah, definitely. Of the films of this particular, what was the company called again?
Emmett Furler
Bondit
films.
Was it?
Bondit are one of the finance resources.
They're one of the
film.
finance resources, but they are the prominent one.
They're the one that you see all the time.
It's the one you see all the time.
They're like his key investor. One of his.
Yeah.
Highland Media Group, I think, made it, didn't they?
Yeah, they're involved usually in this sort of thing.
Or distributed it. I can't remember. But there's so many different companies involved in these ones.
Exactly, but every now and again they are going to actually sort of produce something decent, and this is one of them. So there you go, 3 7s for Savage Justice. Go check it out. Our next review is Ash and Bone. Cassie is a rebelling teen with a new stepmom, and when her animosity escalates, her father Lucas decides to take her and his new wife Sarah out of the city for some bonding and quality time together. What they find instead is the McKinleys, an urban legend more true and terrifying than their worst nightmare. Okay, so this is the latest film, Will, from a director called Harley Wallen. I've actually covered a lot of his stuff before on my other website, and I've been pretty impressed with his stuff overall. The main issue I've had in the past with his films is that they are way too long. They've been clocking in around about 2 hours, basically. So straight away, I'm really happy to see, that this is a more manageable sort of 90 minutes, as just about any horror film should be, roughly. So there's that. There are other sort of parallels here. He does star in the film. He plays Lucas. His wife is in the film as well as she is in the others. Other cast members have also appeared in sort of previous films. So Harley's one of these guys who, likes to have familiar faces on set. Basically, I guess that's what it boils down to, and is loyal to people who worked for him before. This is it. It's a boilerplate film, basically. It's there's not a lot wrong with it. In particular, but there's nothing really which is going to sort of stand it out from others of its ilk. And I kind of want to talk about this sort of enduring cliche of the sort of hillbilly hick mass murderers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it is it's an enduring theme throughout sort of horror movies. This sort of thing. There's a particularly nasty one which came out last year called Butchers, which I must have, I have to sort of begrudgingly respect it because it was very well made and produced, but it was, the nasty. This isn't as nasty, and I think that basically comes down to the budget. It's probably the only area for me where the budget is, or the lack of is evident.
Yeah.
Which was kind of get into a little bit. But what are your initial thoughts on Ash and Bone?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to go along with. I'd have to echo what you said. I mean, it's such a well used thing.
Yeah.
Like you've seen that many that
out of towners, end up sort of rubbing the locals up the wrong way.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I mean, it's this is a little bit. I mean, it's. I was going to say it's a little bit different. I mean, it's not. They themselves are not kind of like It's not like they walk in and the whole town's against them. It's like without the kind of bad guy family, they they're sort of, they're not totally out of their depth in
No.
that sense, kind of thing. They're not. It's not. And I was actually thinking when you said, oh, there's the kind of murderous hillbilly sort of trope thing. What was the film that started that? Was it Deliverance or Straw
Well,
Dogs? What was it?
I mean, they sort of touch on it, but I think the real sort of like template is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's that kind of thing. People sort of living on the outskirts of town, and the rumors build up, and oh my god, the rumors are true, kind of thing. It's that sort of scenario, I guess. But things like Hills of Eyes will be another one, I guess.
I think probably you sort of think, well, why does it? Why is it still so? Is it popular in America because those films have such cult status and they were so, they kind of shaped horror cinema, or is it because occasionally stuff like this still kind of, not exactly, but things like this happen, with the kind of
this is what I'm wondering, is this like one of these sort of dark secrets that America isn't telling the rest of the world?
Because it actually does. I mean, if you sort of like occasionally, I mean, I remember this is going back about kind of probably 15 or 20 years, that they sort of they found there was like a Fritzl type guy living in the swamps in Florida, I think. A really awful thing. He'd had a load of kids and then had kids with them, kind of thing. I don't think he necessarily sort of was kidnapping, tourists and murdering.
Yeah, because it wasn't.
It was bad enough.
Yeah, there was that one. There was quite a famous one, going back a few years now, of this woman who'd been basically kidnapped and kept by this guy for years and years, and she'd eventually escaped. And it was like, she'd been there for like at least like a decade or something.
Was this in America?
Yeah. There's all this sort of stuff going on.
It kind of, I think, because America is so vast, and in these kind of mountain areas, forest areas, swamp areas, or out in the kind of prairies and stuff like that. It's so remote that people can kind of sort of grow up and live their lives in kind of almost isolation from what's happening in the rest of the world, sort of thing. And like you've got these separate, you have these huge urban areas, that most of the world kind of thinks of as, oh, that's America, these huge urban sprawls, these huge metropolises where there's,
but most of it's on the coast, isn't it? So it's all but
and you have this other America these vast areas of semi-rural, where you got people who kind of live country, and it's like two totally distinct kind of societies, isn't it? Where I suppose you got people who don't understand and don't want to live in the other place, the other society, and so I suppose it makes a kind of, and it's not changed that much. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Like,
it is that sort of frontiers,man sort of thing, and it's kind of where the Republican base is as well, isn't it? It's like the self-sufficient kind of people,
people like independent,
don't want anything to do with the state, anything like that,
and that still very much exists, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a film we covered earlier this year. It's one of my favorite films of the year, called Ultrasound, and it started with this sort of traveling salesman, or this salesman guy. His car breaks down in the middle, on this deserted road, and he finds this house. It's raining, it's thunderstorms and everything, and he turns up with this rickety old house, and this guy in overalls sort of answers the door. And I'm watching it, I'm thinking, if that was me, the first thought would be going through my head would be like, huh, this is how I die.
Yeah. Like, I can see what's happening.
I can see my future, and it's not very long. Is kind of thing, and that, that's the sort of thing that sort of reminded me here. There's a bit where Cassie, the teenager, she meets up with a couple of people roughly her own age, or at least the boy is, and the first thing they do is point out the missing posters in the bar,
are many,
which are too many. I mean, if again, if that was me, I'd be like,
Yeah,
it's time to go.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's something it's like there's one thing this board has in common, and it's like all of those women are my age.
Yeah,
It's not looking good. The reality, actually, I was just doing a little bit of research before we start recording, and apparently the reality is if you're a person of color, you're much more likely to be abducted than if you're a white person. So that is, there's a bit of cultural bias there because of the sort of the filmmaker. But the actual reality is that it's persons of color, including especially
general.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think of that, apparently in America, the sort of non-white population represents about 13% of the population, but the amount of actual missing people, it's statistically it's 30% of all missing people are person of color. So it's a huge disparity there. Yeah, just a cheerful thought. I sort of dug out, but looking at this, there was another case. Funny enough, there was a case I heard about a while back, and I thought, oh, this is this sort of thing, and it was about these 4 cyclists in, I think it was Oklahoma, who their bodies were like found dismembered, and they've all been shot, and the bodies dismembered and tossed into a lake. And I thought, my God, this is like straight out of a horror film sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then it turns out these guys were actually on the way to rob somebody, and then sort of had robbed the wrong, or tried to rob the wrong place. I think it was like a junkyard or something.
And then they've been shot.
Yeah. I mean, there is a film there for sure, but
without a doubt, because you start thinking if whoever they turned up and tried to like they tried to turn up and try to rip someone off, like rob them, and they were armed or whatever.
Yeah.
Whoever kind of shot them has got a right to defend themselves with lethal force on their own property in this.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's no point just to dump the bodies.
Exactly. So, like, what happened? What was this person, the defender, doing that they felt, no, I can't really deal with the law on this one. I'm going to go to the trouble of like hacking them up and disposing of the bodies.
Yeah, nothing to see here.
Yeah, and you're thinking, mate, you've actually, if they did this, you've not done anything wrong, sort of thing. That you don't need to start carving them up.
Yeah. But I guess they just didn't want the cops just poking around where they shouldn't. Back to the film. Anyway, back to the film. So a bit of a sort of digression there. I did like the cast in this, especially Erica Hovland, who plays Mae McKinley, the sister to make up. She was really good. And if you actually see her picture on IMDb, she really did immerse herself into the role really well, I think.
Of this kind of like maladjusted kind of sort of remote kind of. She was. Do you know what? It's funny actually. She was. Well, her and her brother, they were.
Yeah. Cleet.
I mean, Cleet was going at it like a pantomime villain, though. Let's be honest. I mean, he really was. Giving it 110%.
Chewing what looked like a pepperoni in the side, pepperami in the side of his mouth the whole time. Yeah.
Which is probably like someone's finger or something, clearly. But he had the kind of whole dungarees with one button on, tattoo on his chest, and he's not a small fella either. He's a big bloke in every direction, and and he was really kind of going for the 100%, outback murderer. Whereas her performance was like really quite sort of not. I mean, she kind of came at it from underneath and sort of, rather than starting at 100, and she was sort of like but she was creepy.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially what she does to poor old Lucas.
Yeah,
in the middle of the film, which is an interesting direction to take things.
Yeah, my brother says I've got a pretty smile, and you're like, oh dear.
Oh God.
This is like, you're not going to be able to say the right thing.
No.
in this situation, like you're not going to be able to charm your way out of this one. However, because it looks like she's kind of throwing him a bone a bit, in that, without wanting to be like do any spoilers, but yeah. it's not going to get better.
It's not particularly nice though. Um, Overall, I mean, I think the only area really that this it lets itself down, and I wouldn't say let itself down, is just in the sort of the sort of the gore scenes or lack of. Basically, a lot of stuff happens off camera. Basically,
I think what you said earlier about the budget. Do you think that there was an element of he didn't want to show because he didn't have he wouldn't be able to do the effects convincingly enough of some of the more brutal.
I think that's kind of it, and again, I kind of criticized him before where he's had like shootouts in his films. It's like, well, there's no muzzle flashes. Sometimes there's no sound effects. Maybe he's sort of. I'm not saying he's taking my criticism on board, but maybe overall somebody's had a word, and
because the gunfights
sound effects,
more,
sound effects are good and stuff. Yeah, that all worked. And it's one of those sort of things where where you sort of, there's a particular phrase I'm looking for, but I can't get to it. But basically, it opens up opportunities. So there's a scene where May is going to shoot an apple off Lucas's head, sort of William Tell style. And the way they do it, it leaves you hanging for a good 5 minutes as to whether or not she did shoot the apple or she blew his head off. But because they couldn't sort of show anything, it's sort of like it gives them that opportunity to sort of ramp up the tension a bit, which I thought was actually quite good. So yeah,
I liked the apple symbolism in that film actually, because like the closing scene, that was quite a.
That was quite interesting. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was. Quite,
I like that because like May's constantly slicing up apples with a little jackknife and eating thin slivers of apple and stuff, which was some good stagecraft I think for her character.
Yes.
When she was talking, but then there's like a nice little coda at the end about that, which I thought was that was good actually.
Yeah.
I was impressed with that. But no, the violence, like, because there's pickaxes and axes aplenty and knives and all sorts of stuff in this film. Maybe it was just a case of because you're left in no doubt as to what's happened.
Oh yeah.
The sound design and everything and what's actually going on. What's happened and it is queasy enough. Maybe what's the director's name again?
Harley Wallen
wanted to just keep this to be a more accessible, lower restriction film. You know what I mean? Rather than because it is. In terms of, I was thinking about it, just like in terms of like everything, like language, explicit gore, sex, violence, all the rest of it, it's not tame at all, because like you say, it's all very well implied. But it's not like one of these ridiculous torture porn films.
Exactly. Which I was kind of expecting, I must admit, from that opening.
So was I. I just thought, and I was really quite sort of surprised.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think you're right. And this particular screener that was sent to us is marked as the theatrical version. So perhaps there is a slightly longer version around that. Maybe they've sort of toned it down to get less than an R rating or an R rating for this one. Who knows? But anyway, I just want to talk about a couple of other cast members. The bartender in this, he's quite an old actor. His name's Mel Novak, and if you ever look him up on IMDb, he's got a list of like 83 credits, acting credits going back to 1971, I believe. He starred in the original Game of Death with Bruce Lee. He did loads of Chuck Norris early films, and he's been working steady. He's kind of like a Robert Forster sort of kind of actor, He's just been sort of working steadily, sort of throughout the sort of decades, basically, and He's now
good.
doing these. Yeah, exactly. He's like 80, you know, he's still
Didn't have
going.
an awful lot to say, but his presence. I mean, like what he was just.
He conveys a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in a kind of very. I mean, he was good. I mean, I don't. You know, I know that these people, like the rest of the cast, are. You know, these people are they're actors, and they
Mm,
you know they these are professional. You know, they are.
mm,
You know, they're working the craft, and they're doing stuff. But like there was times in which I don't think everyone was 100% like is immersed in like completely immersed in the script. I think they got better. I think they warmed up.
yeah.
You know, because some of the conversations, it's like, is the conversation, are the first conversation stilted because the awkward situation, the family dynamics supposed to
Mm,
be bad, or is it just because they're, you know, they're not really kind of living the script yet?
yeah.
And although the barman didn't have an awful lot to say, he was very, very like on point.
Mm,
You know, but that kind of makes sense what you're saying, that this is someone with decades of experience. And I'm certainly not criticizing the cast at all. I just think it was, for me, it was a bit like, this is taking a while, and these people,
yeah.
you know, it seems a bit stilted.
Mm.
You know, what's going on. Like like I say, they all warmed up.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's another actress who we see in sort of flashbacks and sort of other scenes called Calhoun Koenig, who's Cassie's best mate. We
Mm.
see sort of doing a few bits of vandalism and things at the local high school and
That was
stealing
so
a
amateur
police
night.
car.
It was amateur night vandalism. Yeah, the police stealing
Yeah,
the police. They went from some graffiti in an abandoned
yeah.
school that no one's going to give a shit about to
Mm.
you've just stolen a police car. That you know, that's a massive leap there.
That is a bit, yeah. But you know, I thought it was quite fun. Yeah, a little thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I quite liked her performance in that
Mm,
as well. It was a shame, you know, it's a shame she didn't, you know, make the trip make the trip
yeah,
across to where her friend was.
yeah.
But yeah, no, she was pretty good. So overall, I mean, this is definitely an improvement on um, Harley Wallen's other films. You know, because it doesn't look a million miles different from other horror films of this type. You know, I think from a production values, from a technical point of
Yeah,
view,
yeah,
you know, he's nailed that sort of aesthetic. You know, I'm not sort of looking at thinking, you know, budget. Um, you know, he's sort of pared down the cast a bit. Some of his other films got like, you know, casts of hundreds, or
mm,
not literally, but you know, that's how it feels. So this feels like a much tighter film than some of the ones he's done before, and I think that's a huge improvement, basically. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with this. You know, I just wish, you know, there's one particular scene where an actress she gets her sort of Achilles tendon sort of slashed,
mm, mm.
which is a pretty, you know,
Yeah, a la Hostel.
eye-wincing scene. Yeah,
Mm,
and but it's never really sort of followed up. You know, there's nothing to sort of go, oh yeah, you know, she I mean, you know, other stuff happens as well, but
mm.
at the time I'm thinking you really could be making more of this, you know.
Yeah,
But
because that's like a catastrophic injury, isn't it? That's like,
oh god,
know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. It was good. It was good to kind of show like how, because they were. I mean, they were all about. They were basically they were hunters, weren't they?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was all about like, and their kind of ambushes and stuff. They were actually really, they were really quite good at being the villains that they were, and the kind of villains that
Hmm.
they were. Because that scene, like the way they ambushed, it was just clever. You know, it was just like it was a nice
Yeah, yeah,
technical
exactly.
kind of
Yeah.
setup, and I was quite impressed with that. I
Mhm.
think for me, like any, like the only thing that really jarred with me, there was a couple of bits of the script that I don't think were exploited as well as
Hmm.
they could be. I just think it's like, and it was a good script all the way through, but there was bits where, you know, like the interactions between Cassie and her dad and the
Hmm.
stepmom, it was like, um, you just kind of think, no, that would have been, you wouldn't have just left that hanging. Do you know what I mean? Or you shouldn't.
Yeah,
It's just sort of like, you know, like when you're playing a video game
yeah.
and you know the scripts just sort of seem like not quite. They seem a bit off kilter. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like there was a couple of bits where it was like, I don't know if it's editing choices or whatever, which I'm going to come to in a minute, but there was a couple of bits where it's like there's something not right. That just doesn't feel natural.
The funniest part for me was when he tells his wife that he's going to call the sheriff because his daughter had stormed off, and because he cursed, and
She's
I
out of
thought,
control.
yeah, exactly, which I thought was, that is such a white male privilege kind of thing to do.
Yeah. She's, but I mean, it's also, it's like he's going, she's out of control. I'm calling because she took the car and drove off into town or whatever. She could be going to Detroit, and that whole bit is like she could be on her way to Detroit, and then Sarah's like, she's a teenage girl, rebelling, and it's like, okay, but if you genuinely think that she's going to drive 200 miles back to Detroit or whatever, perhaps there should be, perhaps that is the thing that you need to do. But then again, you sort of later on, she's going, oh, if she happens to mention that if there's any more law enforcement involvement, it's 3 strikes and she will get in trouble. And it's like, perhaps Dad should have brought that up at that point as well when he's on the phone about to call 911.
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah,
if he did that, that could end up with her in court.
Yeah, or worse.
Exactly, in county for a very small thing, and it's like,
or the way your US police forces seem to work, dead.
Yeah, get shot. Yeah, like shoot out on the interstate.
Yeah,
but so I don't know. It's bits where, but that, I mean, I am just picking holes. It's like the plot, the narrative, everything moved in the right. It went where it should, and like you say, it was like a boilerplate movie. It was a competent, good movie of this genre, and it even had like a twist at the end where you're like, shit, I didn't actually.
It did have a good little, a couple of good little moments towards the end.
Little twist, but the one thing I don't know if is this like you're saying this is the theatrical release? This is like the polished, this is what. Did you feel that there was a lot of dead space in terms of the editing?
Yeah, sometimes it's like, the camera sort of lingers a little bit too long in the scene.
Too long, and it's like it kind of maybe the problem I had wasn't with the script, but it was just with the way it was timed. It's like things didn't flow, not because they weren't written well or delivered well, but because they just left too much head and tail on certain bits. And it's
that could have been because they're sort of trying to hit a particular run time.
With 1 hour 37 minutes, I think it was. Yeah. But that's it. And like apart from that, it was like there was some really good acting. Like the people you pointed out. Yep, I'd agree with that. May, the sister, was probably the standout.
Yeah.
For me. And it was a good story, but there was nothing in there that you wouldn't necessarily expect from this kind of film because it's been done in that many variations before.
Indeed, yeah. Even with the sort of the bickering family trying to make amends on holiday kind of thing, that sort of thing we've seen before as well. Okay, so how are we going to score this one, Will?
I would say that I'm humming and ahhing between a 7 and an 8, really. But I think because it was quite noticeable for me, that editing, I think if that had been tightened up, it would be a solid 8. But I just think, it wasn't, and it just annoyed me a little bit because the rest of the film was more than competent. Can I give it a 7.5?
So a 7 then, Will. We don't do 0.5.
I know. I'm only kidding. I think, and I feel a bit mean, but fuck it. Give it an 8. Give it an 8.
An 8.
I'm feeling.
Wow.
I'm feeling. No, wait. What did we give an 8 last week? What did we give an 8 to last week?
Solid Rock West. The Solid Rock Trust.
This is I'm gonna have to give it a 7 then.
Yeah. It's not on that level.
Well, no, I'm gonna have to give it a 7 because the editing, everything else in that was so tight, and it's like I've moaned about it in this one, and I can't really ignore it. It's a 7.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go a little bit lower. I'm going to go with a 6.
Crikey,
but
that's harsh.
No, I don't think so. I think this is pretty. I think it's a solid enough film. So that's a 6 and a 7 for Ash and Bone. Go check it out. Our next review is Nutcracker Massacre. Clara is a novelist who is cajoled by her stepmother to join her family for Christmas. There she finds a mysterious Nutcracker doll, which soon becomes possessed and wreaks havoc. So this is a low-budget British horror movie. It's got a really weird in media res bit at the beginning, which is played scene for scene later in the film. It's very, very strange. But other than that, I kind of like this. It does take a little bit to get going, but there are some interesting moments. There's the whole sort of mythos around the Nutcracker. I thought they dealt with that quite well. The costume for the Nutcracker was pretty decent, especially like the way it changed with the demon teeth. That was quite nice. It reminded me of sort of a Doctor Who kind of thing, admittedly. The whole thing actually did remind me of like late Tom Baker, Doctor Who. When they're sort of stuck within a small location. But there you go. And there is one moment which is, for men at least, incredibly eye-watering, which I'm sure we'll get into. Steve, did you see this one? I can't remember.
Yeah, I did.
What did you make of Nutcracker Massacre?
Unfortunately, I did see this one. No, it was terrible. I'm sorry. I mean, I get it's low budget, and it's basically 2 locations: the house and the shop. But I thought the pacing was terrible.
I agree with that.
The acting was awful, especially the boyfriend, Paul. I mean, his performance was terrible. You know, it's supposed to be they're trying to save her, and the most they can gather is Clara. You know, and it's like, come on, mate, put some effort in, for fuck's sake.
You're absolutely right. This is a guy who's supposedly fighting for his relationship with this girl because he's cheated on her, basically.
Yeah, with one of her best mates.
Yeah, there's a scene late in where Clara's stepsister sort of entraps him, basically, and he goes after her to sort of try and sort of go, no, it's it's all a trick or something, but he's got no passion. There's no conviction or anything in anything he says, which, as you say, it's quite annoying.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously the other girl, she's just such a spiteful, hateful character as well. I mean, I was cheering when she bit the bullet to me.
That's kind of the point with that sort of character.
Oh yeah. I know, but it was just ill-conceived, badly done, and it didn't really do anything for me at all. I mean, the best bit is what you alluded to, because
the nuts in the Nutcracker.
Yeah.
They really go there. Yes.
Yeah. But that's the only time they really do.
Yeah, they could have done a bit more, with that sort of thing. Rich, what are your initial thoughts on this one?
What I thought was quite interesting, because they're covering this the same week as Bitch Ass, and they're both kind of similar. I mean, this is a Bitch Ass was clearly influenced by sort of 80s, 90s slasher movies, and I think the same is true here, especially sort of 90s slasher movies, where you can sort of have a concept, have a hook, a character to sort of hang it on. So back in the 90s, we had films like Rumpelstiltskin, which wasn't so much of a slasher movie, but it was kind of in that vein. It kind of sort of, the films were sort of copying Freddy Krueger and things like that. And there was one called The Fear, which was like a wooden dummy.
I remember that one. Yeah, it's like an effigy sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and so the same is kind of happening here. So we've got it's a film about killer Nutcracker, but it's not a little Nutcracker; it's a human-sized Nutcracker, which I was a little bit disappointed by when it's like, oh, it's actually like a person dressed up as a it's a kind of big one, which is kind of the only way you could probably do it, unless because they could have done the doll, because I think the same company that made this have made killer doll movies. I might be wrong, but you know, there's a lot of companies of a similar budget that do a lot of the killer doll movies. So they could have easily done it as a small Nutcracker, could have done it. But here, what they've decided to do is go like the slasher movie route, with a full-size character. And I think some of it works, some of it doesn't. I think one of the issues I had, you mentioned the transformation of the face. Yes, I like the principle, but it's completely static.
Oh yeah, it's like one scene. It just changes sort of like from one scene to the next, isn't it? There's no actual transformation,
or or animation. It doesn't move at all, which bugs me a bit. But the same was true of the film Krampus, which was a massive budget Hollywood movie, and and Krampus in that. I mean, I think this company made a Krampus movie as well, but Krampus in that is like a full sort of face visual effects job kind of thing, and that barely moves either. So it's kind of the same thing. So I was thinking, well, you know, I can't really pull it too much up on that if even big budget movies are basically doing the same sort of thing. So and here they've got no money to work with, so that's perfectly understandable. I like what they've tried to do with it anyway. But so Patrick Bergen's in this, which is great. I think we talked about him a week or two ago.
In one of the throwbacks.
He's oh yes, Devil's Prey.
Devil's Prey, isn't it? Yeah.
So we're a bit further down his career, obviously, with this one, because this is
what I enjoyed about his performance in this is there's a scene where he literally twirls his mustache, which I thought was really cool.
And he's like he's Russian in this, so he's doing a Russian accent.
His performance in this, it actually reminded me of a couple of films of Peter Cushing. There's a couple of films that I think it was Trigon did. It was one called Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, and I can't remember what the other one was called, but he played this in one of them. He played like the owner of this like shop of curiosities kind of thing. And you had people sort of coming in and buying something, and then that would spin out into like a horror short, you know, like a vignette sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
And that's what his character reminded me of. Is that sort of like proprietor, like, you know, he knows that everything in this shop is probably cursed and, you know, going to, you know, bring bad will against somebody, but he's like, yes, of course, it's, you know, it's a very cheap price, you know. That's sort of character. But yeah, no, I quite liked it. I must admit, it did remind me of those sort of films.
Yeah, and he got the I think it's From Beyond the Grave is the film that you're thinking of.
Yeah, it had Ian Ogilvy in one of the scenes, I think.
Diana Dawes was also in that one. The what was I going to say? So yeah, so actually Patrick Bergen is top billed, but he's actually more of an and.
He's an
Patrick
and.
Bergen.
Yeah.
He's an and. He's not the main character. He pops up every now and then. He, again, a bit like with a couple of the other films we've talked about. He's in it more than you'd think he's going to be.
Yeah.
I thought that appearance at the start was going to be it, and that was all we were going to get. So in all fairness, yes, he's top billed misleadingly, but you do get enough Patrick Bergen. So I was pretty happy with the amount of Bergen that I got. I liked him. He's fun. He definitely, I mean, he's the best actor in the movie. You know, you can't say he's not, you know, so there's nobody better. He's got a great presence and stuff. You know, he's stuck in DTV movies and stuff, but he's still got that charisma and everything. He's a bit like a DTV Liam Neeson. He's, you know, Liam Neeson kind of has managed to sort of stay in the big budget movies. Patrick Bergen unfortunately didn't. He's doing loads of, but he's doing, you know, he's solid working actor, doing loads of stuff. He's in Renegades, I think, with Lee Majors and stuff. So, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in there. Always like seeing him. The rest of the cast, young cast, is fine. You know, that sister, the obnoxious sister character, or she's not really obnoxious, just she's evil, she's just nasty. That's, I mean, that she playing the character as well as she can. You know, they're all doing fine with those particular roles. It's a slasher movie set in a house and stuff, so there's very much budget, sort of, you know, budget and environment sort of constraints, which I think the film that actually deals with reasonably well. I actually thought it was, you know, it is fun in that sort of throwback slasher movie-ish kind of way. The Nutcracker scene, with all that implies and stuff, that was kind of it was kind of a scene from a different version of that movie. You know, it's like they've kind of
like a leftover page from an older script, sort of.
yeah, it's like it didn't really fit into the. I completely understood why it was there and why but it was almost like from a more comical horror movie than this one actually is. This is very straight, and then it's kind of got this sort of gross outy kind of bit in it. And I can't really say what was it? Yeah, so I can't really. There's not really a lot more to say about it than that. I think if you like, you know, and support sort of low budget British horror movies, I should say, you'll like this. It reminded me a lot of Clown Doll, which the filmmaker had made as one of their massive slate. They worked on that previously. This recycles some of those elements, but I thought this was better than Clown Doll.
Yeah,
and.
I got one. I wouldn't say it's a grievance exactly, but there's one particular scene which gave me severe case of deja vu, and it is just one of the biggest cliches for any sort of horror movie. There's a character who's like the butler or something who goes down into the cellar.
Oh yeah.
You know, we've seen it, I mean, and it's like, oh, if that's such and such, you know, this isn't very funny, you know, so if that's such and such wearing a costume, and it's like the biggest cliche ever of like, oh, you know, mistaking the creature for somebody who's gone missing or something, and I just thought, you know, surely you can't claim credit for writing that scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, well, this is writing itself now, almost. But yeah, that scene stood out for the wrong reasons, unfortunately. How are you going to score this, Steve?
I'm going to give it a 5.
A 5, and Rich?
Yeah, I think you know, if you're interested in it, I think it's worth a look. But you know, it is a film that's got its problems. It's got its budget limitations and stuff. It's not great, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. I think a 5 is reasonable. Yeah,
I think so too. You know, we have seen films of a similar budget which have managed to sort of pull it off. This doesn't quite get there, but
this is made by the directors Rebecca Matthews, who's a couple of the previous they've done loads of films, but a couple of the previous ones that we've covered were Witches of Amityville, Academy, and
this is
Exorcist Vengeance.
Yeah.
Both of which I enjoyed on a similar level, I would say.
Yeah,
I think I don't mind the movies that she's making with her company. I think I don't flock to them, you know, but I don't mind watching one every now and again, especially if there's an association with a certain Tom Joliffe.
Exorcist Vengeance. Did we cover that one? Didn't? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one with Robert Bronzy in it.
Robert Bronzy. Yeah.
I still want to see The Gardener, which she also did with Gary Daniels and Bronzy.
Okay.
So, I don't expect that's going to be a great action movie, but I'm very curious to see what it's like. It's not yet. It is available, but it's not yet made its way to like Prime or anything as like a free to view for subscribers kind of deal, which is what I'm more inclined to watch it as. But yeah, it's got a great poster, that one, and your ass is grass is the tagline. So the whole Bronzy Daniels thing, I love the concept. And she co-directed that one with Scott Jeffrey, who was the guy who did Clown Doll and stuff. They worked together a lot, those two. Mm-hmm. They've certainly, I think they've done great. I can't remember if it's which ones they're, because I get all the production companies mixed up. There's like Proportion and Champ Dog and stuff, and I don't want to say which one I think that theirs is, but they've definitely got like this niche, and they seem to get a certain amount of money. They churn out a movie, and they're getting out several. They're putting for different distribution channels. Some of them turn up on like YouTube and things as like AVOD, but what they're doing is working, isn't it? I mean, they're clearly getting the view, and you know, I think that's something to be sort of supported where possible and enjoyed, and you know they're only going to grow as filmmakers, I think, especially with the amount of work that they're actually doing. I think we're going to see, if they can stick around in the business, I think we're going to see them doing bigger and better things.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this does have its moments. It does sort of fall into a few, you know, sort of trap falls. Is that what I'm looking for? Pitfalls. You know, a bit of sort of lazy genre sort of stuff now and again. But yeah, I did enjoy elements of this for sure. So I think 3 5s is a fair score for Nutcracker Massacre. Go check it out. Our short shot this week is speed dating. After losing a bet with a friend, Emma is coerced into attending a speed dating evening. This event is as bad as she expected until she meets suave Julian, but any chance of romance is scuppered by the arrival of a gang of assassins searching for a secret agent. Okay, so this is written and directed by Jean-Paul Laye, a guy who we at the DTV Digest really admire. Anytime he pops up in anything, he enlivens proceedings a lot, and it's really surprising to see him purely behind the camera, Rich, on this one.
Yeah, I thought he'd like cameo or something, but we don't see him at all, do we?
No, which is surprising. And you know, I think he does a brilliant job with the script of this. That opening montage where she sat with these various guys, I thought was really, really well done. You know, the editing and the actual sort of dialogue, I thought worked really well.
Well, because he's written it exclusively by himself, I think. And
exactly.
Yeah, and it's not what you'd think. I mean, it certainly wasn't what I thought going in. I was like, oh, Jean-Paul Laye, you know, action.
I was expecting something much more meat-headed, you know, admittedly, but this has nuance. It has, you know, panache. Basically, you know, it's got a proper
wrong foot's here. It's like
really
it's not when you start, you think, oh, I feel like I'm watching the wrong film here because coming in with certain expectations.
Steve, what do you think of this one?
I really enjoyed this actually. It's like you say, it's that first montage, you know, sets the scene really well, gives it that bit of a comic vibe, and a bit like Savage Justice. The second half is just like, you know, action scenes, but it works really, really well. I thought the choreography was absolutely brilliant, and it just works really, really well. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing it made into, you know, feature length, you know, a bit longer, bit more time with the characters and stuff. Because even the characters I thought were really decent as well. Because sometimes when it's like this, it's just like an action scene and you don't really get into the characters or anything like that. But with this one, I thought it really did.
Yeah, I totally agree. It gives its characters, you know, sort of some you know, it gives them the time to sort of breathe a bit and, you know, get to know them. It's not like Art House Dropouts where you're literally straight into a fight school, sorry, Art School Dropouts, straight into a fight scene. And you know, the humor works really, really well. This. You know, I love those. You know, the guy at the beginning when he's going, oh yeah, I got my first yacht when I was 18. I like to play golf off it. The golf balls at the Wales or something like that. You know, all that sort of stuff. I just thought it was very funny. Even the guy who was like more interested in another girl on another table, you know, that just sort of rang really true for some reason. You know, but yeah, I just thought it was really, really well done, those bits. I suppose really the only thing is it is so obvious who the protagonist is. If you see what I mean, you know. You know, they do a reasonable job of setting up Julian, but really, we all know who we're meant to be rooting for. You know, and let's face it, no male secret agent is ever going to call themselves the Silver Fox unless they're Pierce Brosnan and 50 years old. You know. but it's going to be like the Red Wolf or something. It's not going to be Silver Fox. It's, it does sound kind of a bit more sort of delicate, shall we say. The choreography I absolutely loved in this. There's a couple of bits in particular. There's a bit where she shoots a guy in the leg to sort of basically stop, and she only does it to immobilize him, to stop him from moving. So then he's in the perfect line of sight for her to use him as a shield. It's just I actually replayed it. It's like, she's done it, to stop him right there. Right, I need you to stop there, so I shoot you in the leg, and then uses him as a shield.
The style of it really reminded me of like John Wick, to be fair. Like the gunplay and
it's not like one shot and you're done. It's like, no, I'm going to put like 3 bullets in you to make sure you don't move. I like that. Yeah, I like that stuff. There's a bit where she's basically kicks, she holds a guy to the wall with her foot while she shoots him. That sort of thing is just really, really well done. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure you did as well, Rich.
Yeah, and say it sort of addressed one of the things that one of the accusations I have, some problems I have with some short action films, in that it's just kind of a fight scene and you don't really get sort of any build up or character development and sort of wrap around. And this is like a fully rounded kind of thing. And it's actually it does it so well with sort of the establishing the speed dating sort of start part of it. It's a sort of a bit like something like that bar fight movie that we saw. It's kind of like the lead character played by Eloise Lovell Anderson is at this speed dating event and establishing her sort of interact her mindset and sort of her, her way of being, and sort of her tired, she's here but sort of under duress. She's like, oh, I don't really want to be here, kind of thing, and having to deal with all these people who really not very interesting at all and stuff. And the film it's 13 minutes long, and it spends several minutes of that running time with that plot stuff. And I was watching it thinking, it's that wait, when are you going to get to the fireworks factory, or when's the shoe going to drop, kind of thing, because it was I'm borrowing that fireworks factory from you, Mike, because that's the expression that you always,
it works really well.
You've stuck that in my head now. But when's, you're thinking this is a John Paul Lye film, when's the action going to kick in, how's it going to kick in? And then it kind of becomes a different thing after the first few minutes, which I think is fine. It's got this kind of setup, and then it kind of moves in a different direction, which is good because we've already done all the character setup and stuff. And then that's kind of the middle part bit, and then establishing, okay, where are we going to go? Who's actually the main character? Who's going to lead the action, and how's that going to unfold and whatnot? And I thought that all worked really well. Anderson I'm amazed that this is like one of the only credits she's got, certainly as a lead performer. But I've looked at her IMDb, and unless there's stuff hidden away that's not listed there, she's not done a huge amount. But she's got credits going back to the Steven Seagal film Out for a Kill, apparently. But she doesn't seem like she's old enough that she would have actually been in that, because that was 20 years ago. So that's a bit of an odd one. So whether that I'm curious to go back and check the film on that. But she's great. She works. The film reminded me of Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Night and Day. Although I haven't seen Night and Day, but it's that kind of
True
playful,
Life, something like that sort of.
It's that kind of rom-com action kind of thing, where somebody's got like secrets and secret skill sets and stuff that come into play and all that. And I think actually I didn't like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, to be honest. It wasn't really my cup of tea. And I haven't seen Night and Day, but I have seen Bang Bang, which is the Bollywood version with Hrithik Roshan, which was quite fun. But yeah, I like this. This is called Part 1, so I'm very interested to see if he's just sort of, whether he's got a Part 2 ready, whether it's sort of going to gauge interest and see how it does, because this has got good production values, and they've like a lot of these short films, they're being put out on YouTube or something. They've got to get the money from somewhere. So what's the grand plan? Is it like is he hoping to make like a series? Could it be like a multi-part series? Is there a potential film development? What's great about this one is it's not like a proof of concept where it just sort of leaves everything too open and unresolved. It's a very self-contained story with the potential to go further. And there's that, I don't know if you stuck around for the mid-credits scene, but there's like a lead in for like a next part in there.
I missed that one.
Which was oddly similar to actually Mad Heidi's conclusion, so thematically. But liked it a lot, and I can see around like the Twitter and everything, it's getting a lot of attention. John Paul Lye's got such a great reputation. Night Shooters in particular, if nobody's seen it, is the one that I would say. I've never seen Prey, was it in Cambodian film? Was it
Jailbreak?
Jailbreak, sorry. Prey was from the same makers as Jailbreak, wasn't it? But Jailbreak is the one, yes.
Jailbreak is superb.
I do need to see that.
It's low budget, but it is really, really good.
I liked also seeing Laurent Plans. I'm probably going to butcher his name. Laurent Plansal, who his sort of cohort, does a lot of stuff like the Division short film that he did with him, and A Care, the Ross Peacock movie. So he turns up in it, and also Phoebe Robinson from I Am Vengeance Retaliation. I enjoyed seeing her. She was also in Black Site, which we covered on the throwback a while back and stuff. So she's a performer I enjoy seeing. It's great. I mean, it's one of the top action shorts of the year, I would say.
You can tell we like this one because we've talked about this probably as much as we have any other film on tonight's show. So there you go. We don't score the shorts, but we certainly recommend you check them out, and you'll find a link to this in the footnotes below. Please go check it out. Spread the word. Our DTV throwback this week is Santa's Sleigh. Santa Claus is actually a demon who lost a bet with an angel and is forced to become the giver of toys and happiness for 1,000 years. But when that time is up, all bets are off and he returns to his evil ways. I didn't know what to make of this. That's wrong. Going into this thing, I was... because sort of Christmas-themed horror movies haven't really done it for me, I must admit. Even though I liked Once Upon a Time at Christmas, admittedly. But going into this one, I thought, oh, what's this going to be like? And I have to admit, I had a blast with this. Absolute loved it. You've got Bill Goldberg, WWE wrestler, as Santa Claus. I thought he was absolutely superb. We got the kid who finds out that he's, everything about Santa, that everything about Santa is wrong. So it's almost like a lead into like, one of these sort of clickbait things. But I thought this was a lot of fun. I have to say. Steve, had you seen this before? Heard of it?
No, actually. I had a blast with it as well. It was really just dumb, stupid fun, but even though, it was silly, it was daft. I mean, I liked how the way the Goldberg was basically using his wrestling moves to kill people. You know what I mean? It wasn't turning into some martial artist or anything. He was actually using moves that he'd use in everyday life or whatever like that, and I actually like the story as well, how he was a demon and how he became Santa and how it was a bet with an angel, and the angel turned out to be the kid's granddad, and how it actually worked. It was quite clever in the way. It's a bit of a stupid B movie, but it did work.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The story actually worked. It was nice to see. Is it Imelda Raven from Lost as a kid?
All right.
I didn't know she'd done anything before Lost, really. And oh shit! Also, interestingly, it was produced by Brett Ratner as well.
Yes, that was interesting.
Yeah. Now, was this like before Rush Hour and stuff, or after?
No, this is way after.
Definitely after. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was 2005. This was made.
Yeah. He just seemed a bit low budget for something that he'd been involved in at that time. You know, I don't know. Maybe he just stuck his name to it. I don't know, but
I think that's probably more of a that kind of thing. I think he's just sort of lent his. I don't know if it was his production company or something that did it. But
yeah. But yeah, no, really enjoyable. I thought the kills were quite interesting as well.
Basically, from what I'm seeing on the director David Steinman, he worked on Rush Hour 2 and a couple of other Ratner, a couple of other Ratner projects. So he was on Red Dragon. He's listed as Mr. Ratner's assistant.
Right, okay.
So and Family Man as well. So yeah, he was an assistant. It looks like he was Brett Ratner's assistant for several years, and now he's been sort of given this opportunity to direct.
Can anyone tell me what the connection is with James Caan? Because I was really shocked to see James Caan turn up in as at the beginning of the film.
Well, you got like a cameo-laden sort of pre-credits sequence, haven't you? James Caan sort of like leading the table, the family dinner. Fran Drescher and Chris Kattan, is it? And
and Rebecca Gayheart as well.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. So I don't know what James Caan was. I mean, James Caan's done all sorts of stuff. But,
absolutely.
It was great. It was great to see. I'd forgotten he was in it actually.
Right, he's there for that one.
Yeah. It's like an opening. It's a sort of a cameo sort of scene setter, isn't it?
Yeah. But this was a lot of fun. Robert Culp was really good as Granddad. Saul Rubinek.
The cast is excellent.
It was really good. The funniest scene, I mean, he got Emily de Raven, as you say, as a sort of the girlfriend, and she comes from this family of hunters. And she comes around with some it was a roadkill Wolverine or something. And he just he opens the tin foil and he just hear the flies and he sort of closes it. I just thought that was brilliant.
Near the end when she bumps into her dad and all his hunting buddies, shooting Sander down and stuff like that.
But I like that, because usually the love interest is sort of like the just Little Miss Perfect kind of thing, and they sort of gave her this sort of like redneck sort of like streaks, this sort of which just this sort of very earthy kind of background, which it endeared the character even more, I think.
Yeah, so this was I think this is a kind of a little gem of a movie. It's really fast paced. It's less than an hour and 20 minutes long. And you never get bored. It's kind of spoofy, but not too spoofy. It's kind of it's got a lot of jokes in it that land quite well, as you say, with like the roadkill pie and stuff like that. Bob Goldberg, I wanted to see this when I heard about it because I became kind of a Goldberg fan after seeing him in Universal Soldier: The Return. So this was kind of a big sort of central leading role for him, which I think he fitted really well. The action is really good. The action's all done by Andy Cheng, who's one of the best guys. US SEALs 2, the Rundown for The Rock, Welcome to the Jungle. He's done loads of fantastic work, and I think his style, his sort of the martial arts sort of stuff that he does, and working that with Goldberg's wrestling skills and stuff, just produces some really, really good sort of. It's not an action movie or anything, but they work some really nice.
It's a physical film,
stuff. Physical, really nice physical confrontation stuff in. Goldberg's sort of going for it. That works really well. The cast is fantastic, as we've said. So Robert Culp and stuff. It's kind of lots of people it's him and stuff like that. Like Saul Rubinek and whatnot. The only sort of weak point is the sort of the boy who's the lead character, which is a kind of a problem with some of these movies where you put this young teenager at the heart of the movie who's not a very experienced actor, and he's just not. He's fine, but he is very much outshone by Emily de Raven. As his say love interest, she kind of gets more. She's much more of the sparkier of the two characters, but because these movies sort of tend to focus on a male character, they kind of we've kind of got this kind of wet lettuce sort of lead and stuff. But there's some nice stuff, and there's loads of world building. It's a shame there isn't. Maybe there is a sequel, but I don't think there is. But there's so much world building with all this. You know, everything's very heavy-handed as well. It's like they live in a town called Hell.
Yeah.
And because he was told to go to Hell, so he actually went to Hell. And they've got names like Yulson or something. The characters, I can't remember what the name of the Yule. Yeah, they are called the Yulson family, and they're like guardians of something or whatever. There's all this stuff. Dave Thomas is in there as the pastor who's going out to strip clubs and stuff. There's it all cracks along at a nice pace. I imported it because it had no sign of a UK release at the time. I think it took about 3 years to actually get a UK release, and I didn't realize it had. It was like 2008 it actually came out, and I went back. I liked it more seeing it this time around. I think it hasn't aged really. It works really well, and seeing it on the back of Violent Night. What's quite interesting is there's some DNA that's similar. I think there's there's one moment in it actually that I don't know if Violent Night took it intentionally or coincidentally or as a homage or whatever, but there's a bit where Santa sucks a cane and makes it sharp to attack someone with it. And they do, and the exact same thing is done and also in Violent Night. Obviously there's that sort of it's made by 8711, so there's that same kind of physicality of the sort of throwing around the MMA sort of moves and stuff as is sort of teased in this movie. So it's kind of a proto Violent Night, but much more leaning into the comedy than the sort of I mean, Violent Night is very comical as well, but it's not as sort of dark and I mean, this is you could say this is a little bit mean-spirited, but I think it's much more playful and sort of comical, a bit more Gremlins-y, I think. And I think this is one of my favorites. There's a lot of Christmas horror movies and stuff out there, and Sint is another one I'd highlight as well worth your time. It's a Dutch one, but Santa's Sleigh is one of those films that I think practically nobody's heard of, really, unless they're a wrestling fan, and it's spend an hour and 20 minutes. I don't think you'll regret it.
Absolutely. And that is the end of this week's show. So thanks to Steve and Rich for joining me this evening. I think, for the last regular show of the year, I think a pretty decent sort of smattering of films we've had.
Yeah, we've had we'll be back to talk about the year in our next episode, but I think as a quick sign off, I think this is a pretty good batch that we've had. I think so. Week.
We've had a lot to talk about, which is always good. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter at the DTV Digest. Also check us out at the Short Shots, where Rich puts a new short link up every evening around about 8 o'clock. Otherwise, Merry Christmas, everyone, and tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.